There's no doubt in my mind. I know it's considered private property. However, for people to come in and just cut down trees because they don't like trees, we have to talk about our environment, and that is part of it. We cannot just let people just cut things down. In fact, I raised a question before this meeting with Jerry Szymanowski here, and I asked him, was that question addressed in regard to the new fields? And he said very few trees had to be taken down. And I realize we need the new fields. And as long as it's not going through and, just keep removing. We need trees. We need this for the environment. And I think that just asking for a permit, if somebody comes and looks and sees that the tree is diseased, damaged in some way because of a storm, there's no reason why that tree can't be taken down. But then you also have to say, as part of the process, that there is something that is going to be replanted there. I don't think it's a big issue, but I do think it's an important one, the fact that we have to have something like that in place so that we just don't have people cutting trees down. I know there are some people who don't like the trees, and if on the little strip between the roadway and your sidewalk, if some of my neighbors had their way, they would literally go out there and cut those trees down. And I live on a tree block, and it is just wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Schwartz?
This question is close to my heart. I was trying to get a tree ordinance in Verona for, I think, at least 20 years. We went through several incarnations of a tree ordinance, tree replacement, tree mitigation. There are certain problems that you do have with it. First of all, there's the issue of compliance. What you're going to have is you can't have the tree police going through town counting trees in people's yards. You can't expect neighbors to rat out their other neighbors, so-and-so just cut their tree down, go find them, make them mitigate. So a tree ordinance of that type is very difficult to pass, plus the fact they've been challenged in other towns. But what we can do is if we can get permitting for people to cut down trees. And in getting a permit, somebody from the town, from the Environmental Commission, from the Shade Tree Commission, should be able to go to that property, inspect the property, look at the tree that they want to cut down, and inform the homeowners of what the consequences are of cutting that tree down. Very often, what will happen is that somebody will cut a tree down, and their neighbor who lives below them, because Verona is a hilly town, the neighbor below them all of a sudden has mud in their basement. They'll cut the tree down, and all of a sudden their air conditioning costs, their electricity bills go way up because the shade that tree provided no longer cools. So a tree ordinance is important, or awareness of trees is important. When I was on the Environmental Commission, we did start the Treasured Tree program, rewarding people for taking good care of their trees and having special trees. So it's kind of a win-win situation when you have a permitting process and then good public information about the value of trees in town. But I don't think you can ask homeowners to incur thousands of dollars in costs to replace trees, especially in a town as small as ours. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Williamson?
Yes, thank you. I was on the Environmental Commission when the first ordinance in Verona was drawn up that didn't get passed. And that's when we started the Treasure Tree program. Was when, from what I remember, there was a tremendous awareness of trees being brought around. Whether or not somebody has the right to cut trees or not cut trees on their property, that's always been the argument against the ordinance. I had no problem if somebody has to get a permit, being in the construction business. Jack can tell you, you got to get a permit for everything today. So one more permit, as long as it's not obstructive, is not a problem. As far as the ordinance, you have enforcement. Who's like Mayor Schwartz said, who's going to be the tree police and go around, marking everybody's trees? Oh, he cut one tree down. I think that was a 6-inch tree. No, maybe it was a 4-inch tree. That's tough. I think the permit idea is a good idea. As far as an ordinance, strictly yes or no, I would say that's a tough one to sell on the residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ryan?
Thank you. This is a tough issue, and as they say, the devil is in the details, if I can use that cliche, because you do get into serious issues about what a person can do with their own property. And I think what you also have to look at there is if the person's tree, okay, would affect a neighbor's property in a negative way, you may want to have some type of ordinance crafted that the governing body would be able to send somebody from the Shade Tree Commission or the environmental group to, the permit idea I think is a good one, because that would trigger an investigation. Someone would go out, take a look at the tree, and basically, if it's shown that it doesn't really have any sort of a negative effect, even though it's a beautiful looking tree on a neighbor's property, I don't think you have the right to tell that person that they can't control their own tree. If you do stuff like that, it also oftentimes would lead to litigation, maybe just driving the township's legal costs. So that's one of those things that sounds like a great idea. Let's put a tree ordinance in. And I think as Teena just mentioned, though, that's been bouncing around for 20 years. And I think it's been bouncing around because no one has been able to really come to grips with where do you draw the line? Is it between property rights and the community's rights? And in any of these zoning ordinances, we've seen that come up time and time again in the recent decision on a Bloomfield Avenue property. That's always the balancing act. What can the person do to their property versus the needs of the community? So I think if you crafted an ordinance where you had specific guidelines to say that a person cannot take a tree down, one, until it's permitted, and until an arborist or someone who has the expertise to come in and look at the negative effects of taking that tree down. If it's just aesthetics, I don't think you can tell the person that they can't take the tree down. If it's a drainage issue, as someone just alluded to, then I think you'd be on much sounder legal ground saying, no, you can't take that tree down because it's going to cause a serious neighborhood problem. So that's the kind of thing that I would say you have to take into account. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Roman?
Thank you. I first started hearing a lot about this issue when the potential redevelopment of Kipps Castle was discussed. I live sort of right underneath Kipps Castle, and one of the big fears was that the entire property would essentially be clear-cut to build the houses they wanted to put on it, and it would have substantially changed the look of the area. And we all agree this is a very beautiful community. We just were named a Tree City USA again, which is a running designation. We're very proud of that. And private property rights are a substantial concern. I think owners have the rights to do what they want with their property so long as it doesn't have a negative effect on the neighborhood. And we handle this on a lot of other issues. If you want to build a deck or a garage or something else or expand your house, this is why we have a zoning ordinance. This is why we have the Board of Adjustment, the zoning board. There are processes for review. So I think, again, it goes as to how you craft this ordinance and how you allow for permitting and appeals and enforcement. Everybody agrees that eventually there's the need to take down a tree. It may be diseased, it may be in the wrong place, it may be the wrong species. Again, it might be aesthetics. And everybody also probably agrees that we don't want the whole town clear-cut as well. So it's where you find that happy medium in between there and how exactly you address all the cases. I think that there is room for a carefully crafted ordinance, but I don't want to step on anyone's private property rights to do what they want to do with their own lot. And again, I would hope that we would protect their neighbors as well. So if there is going to be a drainage issue or an issue with sunlight infiltration into someone's lot or a loss of privacy, that we take all those into concern. And we're fortunate to have the Shade Tree Commission, which is an existing body that could serve as sort of an adjudicator for these issues. I think it's something that's going to come up. We're going to have to deal with it. If it's been talked about for 20 years, maybe it does need to be looked at a little bit further in detail. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question, Ms. Schwartz, will be followed.